Alright, so feels good to be talking about Ultraman again, since it's kind of been a while since I've talked about anything Ultraman related on this channel. So I thought we kind of talk a little bit about, how Mill Creek, a couple years ago, I'm not exactly sure how long ago, but they basically announced that they were going to do home releases of the Ultra series, but obviously the details weren't really all there. It was really hard to really kind of go over what exactly they were releasing, because obviously when it comes to a series like this, they haven't really gotten that many home releases over the past few decades or so. It's always either, Ultraman, Ultra 7, or maybe Ultraman Tiga, but that was really about it. So now recently, we got the announcements that Ultraman Tiga and Ultraman Blazar are getting their own releases, which is of course fantastic because it's nice to see that they're still continuing this lineage, especially considering that it kind of felt like for a short time things not only slowed down, but it just felt a little bit tight. It kind of feels like that we were no longer getting any releases. Not that that's a bad thing or anything, only because they pretty much released like the entire like series. I mean, like, I don't, to go over every single release that they got. I mean, we might be here a while. I'm just gonna say it. I mean, they released the classics like Ultraman, Ultra 7, Turn of Ultraman, and then of course they went further than that. They went into the Heisei era. They also released Tiga, Dyna, and Gaia, Ultraman Cosmo. You get the drill. Even the current ones as well. I remember one of the first ones they released was Ultraman Orb and Ultraman Geed. Or Geed. I'm not sure. I always kind of confused the two. So it's great to see that they're continuing making more, but I just thought I'd kind of make this video as a little bit of a discussion as to how we got to this point, because it's a type of series where it's not exactly dormant, but it was definitely one where like not a lot of people really heard of it, which is a shame because we all know who Godzilla and Gamera is. You might as well also reveal to the world a little bit more about who Ultraman is, because for the most part a lot of their home DVD releases, they did release like the other series and all that, but they were mostly in like Malaysia or so, because Malaysia, they love Ultraman. They are crazy for it, which, I mean, that's great. But what about here in the United States? Like, we got nothing. I mean, we got like maybe like one or two different DVD releases of Ultraman, and that's about it. I'm pretty sure Ultra Q also did got a DVD release as well, but hell, if I remember how it was, I mean, like, where I even get started on that. And mind you, not too sure about Ultra Q, but Ultraman for sure. Of course, obviously it did get released with an English dub, only because where do I even go with this? I mean, I'm just trying to remember from the top of my head, because it was, even here, like in the United States or so, it did get like an American release on TV and stuff like that. So it makes sense that it will have its own English dub as well as its own English opening. So there's nothing wrong with that. But Mill Creek, couple years back, not too long ago, they've blessed us with these like new, like updated, original formatted versions, and they were kind of sort of, HD, like a little bit of higher quality, not 100%, because obviously if you watch these shows, these are really old, not counting the newer ones that are airing right now, like the current generation of Ultraman. But obviously if you look back at the ones from the 60s or so, obviously it's hard to really recover everything, and kind of format it all in Blu-ray, and that's honestly the way to go too. I mean, I know that there's that debate over DVDs and Blu-rays, but honestly it kind of kicks ass in this situation. I think it does a pretty good job, and of course I own a couple of them. I don't own a lot of them like I wish I would, but just to kind of give you an idea, of course this is what I'm talking about. I got the complete series of Ultra 7. Has all the episodes, even has like a nice little booklet to kind of talk to you about the history a little bit, even with like the makings of it during the time, showing the production, showing the kaijus, and it's great, right? So then of course they also did releases of like their new generation stuff. Yeah, so this is of course Ultraman Ginga. Yeah, and you got, honestly, you got like two series here, a movie, and like one of those weird little specials that they like to do. Obviously one has better quality than the other. Sure, this is an amazing cover, but kind of slips down a little easily. I try to protect these things so much, but it was so hard, so it always felt like it was gonna get dented no matter what. I remember first getting this on Amazon, honestly, like, gee, this was my favorite. This was honestly like the one. I don't know what it was, Don't get me wrong, I love the classic Ultraman series, but there was just something about G. I don't know what it was. Such a great show. Don't get me wrong, Ultraman Trigger was also pretty good too, but then again, I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion because a lot of people really don't like Trigger. Mostly because people accuse it of like trying to copy what Tiga was doing, but the show was never really meant to mimic Tiga. It was just meant to be its own thing, with the exception that your main hero, Trigger, of course, has some sort of connection with Tiga, even if it's from another universe. But let's not talk about that, right? Let's talk about like what was like some of the I was gonna say barricade obstacle courses. What were the obstacles that kind of got in our way with these releases, right? Well, for starters, they were releasing them pretty randomly. We got like the original series from the 60s releasing in order. We got Ultra Q, which was the very first series that started it all, and Ultraman, Ultra 7, Return of Ultraman, Ace, Toto, Leo. There you go. You got all 7 series right there in order. But when it came to like their more newer stuff, they were just releasing them randomly. So you got Yi, Orb, and then we got like their short series too, the prequel to Orb Origin, where if I remember correctly, like, you see, this is what I love about these releases, because I'm pretty sure this one in particular was a series that only premiered on Amazon Prime, or Amazon, whatever it's called. I don't know. I don't keep up with that stuff. I could be wrong. I remember hearing that a lot though back then, so I was like, oh, so as much as I want to watch it, I can't. Now you can. You know, there you go. You got the Blu-ray right there. So that's the only thing. The consistency wasn't there, especially with the designs. Like, you'll notice how, okay, Orb came out in 2016, Geed came out in 2017. So if I were to, you know, put them in order, you see how the design, you see how like you got the logos and how they're kind of, you know, lined up. Obviously, because Orb is a prequel series, it's like in the middle, so that's gonna hurt a little bit. Don't get me wrong, eventually they were just like, you know what, screw it. So they were just designing the covers however, and that wasn't the problem. Honestly, everything seems pretty fine. The only biggest problem they had mostly was when it came to their DVD releases. That was when things started to get a little rough around the edges, because obviously, I think this was like 2021. They announced the Ultraman and Ultraman 80. And then of course they also mentioned that they were gonna do the Heisei era Ultraman shows as well. But one thing that I've noticed right away was, oh, they're not on Blu-ray, they're actually only on DVD. So you're probably wondering, why is that such a big deal if it's only on DVD? It's not the format it's in that's the problem, it's the consistency. That's the problem. Because obviously, you know, DVD cases and Blu-ray cases, obviously the two different sizes, so it's hard to really kind of put them in your collection, and now it's just gonna boggle your mind. And the next thing you know, it looked like most of their other releases only came out on DVD for the most part. So a lot of people were kind of curious about like what's the deal with that. You know, it wasn't like a big huge deal. That's why people didn't, you know, made a fuss about it. But they did bring up some good points, because for starters, it had to do with like archival footage and broadcasting, because most likely a lot of these shows probably premiered maybe once or twice on television, and then that's about it. So most likely, I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of the case with some of these shows. Which is pretty unfortunate when you think about it, because that really does show. It's like, wow, so at one point Ultraman really did seem like a little bit of a dormant series, which is not great, because mind you, the effort that is put into these shows, it's mind-boggling. Even the ones nowadays, even with all the special effects and all that. But, you know, I can excuse the terrible CGI and all that in the current Ultraman shows, only because they still use practical effects. They still do. Even, like, I remember with Ultraman Trigger, they were showing one of the kaijus, like, they show on set how he looked when they blew him up. And obviously, in the actual show, they slowed it down to kind of give you that visual, all his body parts blowing up and stuff. And, of course, that's not CGI. Some of their effects, like the beam and all that, okay, yeah, fine, those are some weird little effects here and there. Even the old shows, they got their own weird little quirks that didn't really age well. Talking to you, Toto, and Ace. But you get the idea, right? But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that most likely that's probably where they were getting most of their footage from. Mill Creek probably didn't have the rights to get everything, which obviously that doesn't make any sense, because if they're able to get everything from these other shows, Why is it that for some odd reason when it comes to the 90s and 2000s Ultraman, they're not so lucky? It's like all of a sudden now we're getting like these kind of weird sort of cheap releases. And I don't want to say cheap, but there has been times where like quality kind of dips and that the subtitles apparently didn't really match what the characters were saying. That's a lot more harder to really cover because this is a series made in Japan after all. I mean, what we're gonna do? You know what I mean? Not exactly sure. Don't get me wrong, it's not like there hasn't been attempts at English dubbings, for sure as of recent. I mean, I know for one of the Ultraman movies, I think it was Ultraman Ginga S. I know that it actually did had his own English dub or so obviously, oh, and Ultraman X2, I believe that the movie also did had his own dub. Uh, but that, I mean, that's another thing that's a little bit hard to kind of go over because not every single release that we've had has had his own English dubbing, which is of course unfortunate. I don't know about Tiga, but with Blazar, I think, don't take my word for it, but I think that also will come with its own English dubbing, only because when they aired the series, not, you know, I believe it was last year, right? Because right now we're on Ultraman Arc, right? I think little by little, they understand that they're starting to gather an American audience, so it makes sense that they will want to, of course, have some dubbing for the West. So I can only imagine. I'm hoping that that at least stays because, of course, I think this is a great series. If you love Godzilla, this is a perfect series to get into. So again, the thing with the DVDs though, I mean, they made so many, like so many. I mean, we're talking like Cosmos, Max, Nexus, Mebius. I mean, they were all getting like DVD releases here and there, and you know, with varying quality. It was good that we actually got the series. Don't get me wrong, in all of its full glory, and it wasn't like it was censored or anything like that. For the most part, these are completely uncensored. You know, not to say that they were always violent or anything like that. Of course not. You know, I mean, besides Monster Guts, but that's about it. Ultraman isn't really much of a super serious type series, except for maybe Nexus. I know that that's sort of the exception because a lot of people really want more stuff like Nexus. Because after watching a little bit of it, I didn't watch the entire series. Okay, don't chill, all right? Don't freak out, okay? Just because I haven't watched one or two Ultraman series, that doesn't mean I'm a fake fan, okay? I do know my stuff, even if it's been a while. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, yeah, we had a bit of a rock and a hard place, but it looks like now we're getting right back on track. So now we're getting a little bit more better, higher quality Ultraman releases, and we're getting the most recent ones. I'm like, wow. Like, honestly, I thought, like, after Rube, you know, Ultraman Rouge, Rube, whatever it was, you know, I was a little afraid, too, that we were no longer going to get any more releases of the current Ultraman stuff. And no, that's couldn't be further from the truth. We're actually getting more current stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's still a little bit hard, you know, like when it comes to properly releasing them, because we're getting Taiga and then we're getting Blazar. I hope they didn't forget about Z and you know Trigger and then you know Decker. Don't forget about those shows. They existed, you know, and that's like you know what I mean. The spacing, the timing, and stuff like that. Not exactly sure why they still do that, but I guess as long as they release them, it's the least of our problems. But I'm just glad that we're getting more Ultraman stuff again, because that's very nice. And then of course, that's not forgetting the Netflix film. I didn't forget about that. Trust me, because I had a friend that was telling me to go watch it and stuff, but I don't have Netflix, so I can't. So maybe one day I'll cover it whenever I see it. I don't know when though, but until then, that's about it. You know. So hey, it's good. It's good to see Ultraman returning. Oh, that I also forgot to mention that one weird Ultraman film. I forgot what it was called. It was called like Ultraman. The Adventure Begins, something like that. It was like originally it was supposed to be like a pilot series, but then I guess they formatted it into a movie. So it looks like next year that will be getting its own release from Mill Creek. So yeah, a lot more to look forward to. That's great. So hang tight, guys. So you know, definitely be going over some more Ultraman stuff. You know, eventually. So until then, stick around. See you next time.